Hi there, I'm Allegra. My mom told me Grandpa was injured just to keep me home. Then they all went on vacation without me. But that wasn't the worst part. Behind my back, they drained my bank accounts, forged documents, and stole over $7.5 million that was meant for me. How does a family do that to their own daughter? What time are you listening to this, and where are you watching from? Drop a comment below. I really want to know. I woke up to the shrill ring of my phone vibrating on the nightstand. It was barely 6 a.m., the kind of call you never want that early. I blinked the sleep from my eyes and squinted at the screen. Mom. Allegra? She sobbed before I could speak. Dad fell, it's bad. He's at St. Catherine's. My stomach dropped. Grandpa Malcolm. I sat upright, heart slamming. What happened? What do you mean it's bad? He slipped near the stairs. He couldn't breathe. They think it might be his heart. I didn't want to scare you last night. Her voice trembled in that perfect pitch of maternal panic, enough to grip me by the throat. I canceled my flight for the family trip that same hour. I didn't ask questions. I just stayed. Because that's what you do when family needs you. You show up. It wasn't until 4 days later, curled up on my couch in Austin with lukewarm coffee and too much silence, that I opened Instagram. A photo popped up from my cousin Jess. Everyone, all of them, my mom, my dad, Jess, even Dorian, on a yacht in the Maldives. Glassy turquoise water behind them, smiles that cracked wide under tropical sunlight. The caption, couldn't imagine this paradise without my favorite people # family forever. I choked. I reread it 3 times. My hands trembled as I scrolled further. Boomerangs of champagne clinks, videos of beach yoga, a cake that read, "New chapter begins," in cursive icing. No grandpa, no hospital room, no stretcher, no oxygen mask, and definitely no me. 16 years ago, I was the one forgotten at a birthday dinner when everyone assumed someone else had invited me. I remember sitting on the curb outside the restaurant, clutching a gift bag no one would ever open. Some things change, some don't. That night, I drove straight to Grandpa Malcolm's. No texts, no warning. He lived 30 minutes away in a quiet suburb that smelled like pine and retirement. I half expected to find a nurse at the door or a walker near the porch steps. Instead, he answered in golf shorts and socks. "Allegra?" he said, brow furrowed. "Is everything all right?" "You tell me," I replied. My throat was tight. "You fell? You were hospitalized?" He blinked, then laughed, bewildered. "I haven't been to a hospital in over a year. Who told you that?" "Mom?" A pause. A silence that sagged under the weight of something dark. He ran a hand through his white hair and stepped back. "Come in, sweetheart. We need to talk." He sat me down, brought tea he didn't touch. "She asked me to pretend," he finally said, eyes full of apology. "Said it was better if you didn't go, that the trip was too much tension already." My stomach clenched. "So you never fell?" "No, and I told her I wouldn't lie." "But she did anyway." He nodded slowly. Something shattered inside me then. Not loud, not dramatic, just clean and final, like a thread snipped at the root. The next morning, I tried to book a solo trip to clear my head. Somewhere far, maybe even impulsive. I wanted salt air, silence, a horizon that didn't stare back. But my card declined. I tried again. Error. Another bank. Frozen. Every account locked out. Notifications flooded in. Unusual activity. Account under review. Contact institution directly. Panic began its slow creep through my spine. I called customer support. The agent was kind, robotic. "Unfortunately, your access has been restricted pending documentation." "What documentation?" "I'm not at liberty to say, ma'am. The account holder must submit. I am the account holder." But somewhere, something had already claimed otherwise. I hung up. My palms were damp. My jaw clenched so tight I could feel the pulse in my ears. There was no mistake here. No accident. This wasn't about the trip anymore. It was about control. And it had only just begun. I stared at the screen, blinking away the sting in my eyes. The cursor blinked back, useless and smug. Another denied login. Another red flag. Another locked gate between me and my own life. This wasn't just about my bank account anymore. It was about power. Control. I'd spent my adult life believing I was independent, free. Turns out, I'd been living on borrowed autonomy. I called the bank again. Ma'am, due to the nature of the flagged report submitted, your access is suspended until further evaluation. What report? I'm not authorized to discuss the document's origin, but it appears to be psychological in nature. Psychological. That word echoed through my chest like a gunshot in a church. I'm not crazy, I said, low and sharp. I've never been diagnosed with anything. I understand, the agent replied, too calm, too rehearsed. We just follow protocol. I hung up without saying goodbye. I knew who did it. I didn't need proof. I needed confirmation. It was her, Lorraine. The woman who smiled at church and spit venom behind closed doors. The woman who told me not to be dramatic when I cried after being left behind at that school field trip. Who said things like, "No one wants a daughter who causes scenes," with a smile. And now she'd gone to a bank, of all places, with a lie sewn into the skin of a legal document. I paced. I needed air. Instead, I ended up digging through drawers, old boxes, scraps of a life I thought I'd built without needing her. That's when I found the box. It was tucked in the back of Grandpa Malcolm's armoire, unlabeled, locked. But I remembered the spare key he always taped under the drawer. My fingers moved before I even thought it through. Inside, photos, old keys, and one envelope, sealed, yellowed at the edges. To Allegra, open on your 18th birthday. I sat down right there on the carpet and opened it. His handwriting was firm but shaken. Ink smudged slightly near the signature. He'd written with a heavy heart. I could feel it between the lines. He warned me, told me he'd seen the way they looked at my independence like it was an infection. He said he'd tried to speak up, but Lorraine always knew how to spin things, twist them into guilt. He begged me, yes, begged, to trust my instincts. They will clip your wings in ways that don't leave marks, he wrote. I closed my eyes. He saw it. He always had. I'd been so angry with him last week, thinking he'd lied, but he hadn't. He just couldn't stop her. The room felt smaller, like my apartment had shrunk around me. The air was thicker. I didn't cry. I'd done that already. Instead, I reread that letter 3 more times, tracing every word, burning each one into memory. At some point, the sun dipped below the blinds. The only light left was from the desk lamp and the blue glare of my laptop. I opened a fresh document. Title: Everything She Tried to Erase. I listed every time she said I imagined things, every time I was left out, locked out, pushed down. The puzzle started to form. This wasn't about money, it was about identity. And now I had something she couldn't destroy. The truth. My phone pinged. An email from the bank. Account remains suspended, pending updated medical documentation supporting mental stability. I let out a slow breath, then whispered aloud, "They're not just trying to ruin my finances. They're trying to erase who I am." It was time to call Dean. I walked into Dean's office with the kind of hope you don't say out loud, because if it hears itself, it shatters. His office hadn't changed. Still those dark walnut shelves lined with law books he probably hadn't opened in years. Still that damn bourbon bottle in the corner, like he was some southern gentleman out of a courtroom drama. He stood when I walked in. Too smooth, too practiced. "Allegra," he said, like it still meant something. "You look good. I need legal help. Real help, now." My voice didn't shake. That mattered. He nodded, ushered me in, offered water I didn't take. I told him everything, about the bank, the psych file, the letter from Grandpa. I laid it out like a case, one he should have jumped at. Dean furrowed his brow, made the right noises. "That's insane. I'll get into it today. See what filings are in place. Could be a conservatorship maneuver, something quietly pushed through probate court. But I never signed anything. You'd be surprised what people can fabricate." The way he said people twisted in my gut. He promised movement by end of week. But the next day, I got silence. Then the day after that, more delays. He dodged my calls, responded with vague texts. "Tied up in court. Meeting ran late. We'll loop back tomorrow." I looped back first. That's how I caught him, just as he was stepping out of his office onto the phone saying, No, she doesn't suspect anything yet. He froze when he saw me. I didn't stop walking, just brushed past him like I didn't hear it, because I wasn't ready, not there. But that night, I got ready. I called up an old contact at the clerk's office, Tina. We used to work the same paralegal internship. She owed me a favor. Within 2 hours, I had access to records, billing ledgers, client listings, and there it was. Wendell Whitaker, my stepfather. Payments going back 8 years. Line items masked as consulting. Lump sums disguised under dummy firms. Every check signed by a man I hadn't spoken to in over 6 months. Dean wasn't just asleep at the wheel. He'd been driving the damn car. 16 years ago. We met at a law school mixer. He leaned on the bar like he didn't believe in anything, except maybe me. Said my voice sounded like glass being dragged across stone. Sharp, interesting, a little dangerous. I laughed too hard that night, drank too much, kissed him first. We planned to open our own firm one day, serve the voiceless, make waves. I stared at the screen now. That ledger opened like a wound. He didn't make waves. He sank quietly into their pockets. I paced for hours, then stopped pacing. I couldn't stay frozen anymore. I couldn't be their daughter, their embarrassment, their possession. I could be something else, something sharp. I waited for Dean in the parking lot behind his office. It was almost midnight. The streetlights cast long, crooked shadows. When he walked up, he looked tired. Good. I know about Wendell, I said. Just that. Enough. He didn't deny it, just swallowed and said, "It wasn't supposed to go this far." "No," I said. "It was never supposed to be me." He reached for something, I think an excuse, but I cut him off. I needed a lawyer. I got a spy. Then I turned and left. I called Grandpa on the drive home, told him everything. He didn't sound surprised. He sounded ready. "We're doing this our way now," I told him. He paused, then said something I didn't expect. "There's something I should have told you years ago." Grandpa Malcolm's study smelled like old cedar and dusted history, the kind of place that kept secrets better than people ever could. I sat across from him, still raw from Dean's betrayal, still gripping the ghost of that final call. "We're doing this our way now." He hadn't looked at me since I arrived. He just sipped tea he never seemed to taste, hands trembling, not from age but from everything unsaid. "Why wasn't I named?" I asked. "In the trust, the will, the business. Why did you let them erase me?" He didn't answer right away. Instead, he stared at the wall like it owed him an apology. Finally, he got up, slowly, stiffly, and disappeared down the hall. I heard drawers opening, metal clinking. Then footsteps returned. He set a box in front of me, its lid worn, corners frayed. Inside, documents yellowed with time, a folded photograph of me as a child on his shoulders. "I meant to make it all yours," he said, voice like gravel dragged across regret. "Back when I was still sharp, still sure." My breath caught. "What stopped you?" He looked at me then, and for the first time, I saw real shame in his eyes. "Lorraine, she found my medical files, early onset signs, confusion, misplacing things. It wasn't official, not then, but she said if I pushed the transfer, she'd go public. Paint me as unfit, strip me of dignity in front of the board, the press, you. You let her blackmail you. She said she'd protect the family's image, that giving Wendell control would buy peace." I stood up, couldn't sit anymore. "You weren't protecting peace," I said, biting back every tear clawing at my throat. "You were protecting yourself." His silence was his confession. "You were the only one who saw me," I whispered, voice breaking, "and even you signed me away." He looked smaller then, like his spine couldn't hold the weight anymore. "I'm sorry, Allegra. I thought there'd be time to make it right. There's no more time, not for that." Something inside me cracked open, not like glass, like stone, no longer fragile, just hard. "I'll protect myself now," I said, not looking back. But as I grabbed my coat, his voice followed. "I kept one thing, something they never touched. If you're serious about fighting, you'll need it." I didn't answer, didn't turn around. The front door creaked as I stepped into the storm, real and metaphorical. Rain pelted my skin, soaked my blouse, but I didn't flinch. I pulled out my phone. It buzzed. A voicemail. Lorraine. Her voice was calm, too calm. Allegra, we saw the post. If you keep pushing, you'll regret it. I didn't hit replay. I hit record. The buzzing wouldn't stop. My phone lit up like a slot machine. Dozens of texts, missed calls, notifications from news apps I didn't even remember downloading. The kind of digital chaos that only ever meant one thing. Something bad had hit the surface, and it had my name written all over it. At first, I thought it might be another financial freeze, maybe some leaked legal drama from Malcolm's past. But when I clicked the first headline, my stomach caved in. Hartley heiress deemed unstable in leaked family email. I opened the attachment. My hands shook, but I forced myself to read. A letter, supposedly written by Grandpa Malcolm, smeared across the front page of every gossip column and business blog. Words like erratic, unfit, danger to the family legacy. It painted me as a narcissistic mess with delusions of entitlement, a PR nightmare. The signature at the bottom was forged, but that didn't matter now. The damage was already done. By noon, board members from the foundation I helped build were calling for me to take a leave. At the office, colleagues smiled thinly, eyes flicking away like I was contagious. The silence in the elevator felt heavier than any courtroom I'd ever stood in. I locked myself in the bathroom stall, clutching my phone. Just hours ago, I'd vowed to protect myself. And now, this. I could hear Lorraine's voice in my head, the exact tone she'd used when I was 15 and broke a trophy vase. Next time you embarrass this family, there will be consequences. For a second, doubt crept in. Maybe I was losing it. Maybe I had pushed too hard, too fast. Then came the ping. Jonah, an old college friend and tech consultant, had been helping me trace digital footprints from previous issues. He'd gotten into the metadata of the leaked email. This file was altered, timestamps wrong, signature layer doesn't match the document header. Someone fabricated this. Proof. Not just gut instinct, evidence. And just like that, grief gave way to fire. I texted Jonah back. Trace it, find out who. The next day, we did. Dorian, my brother, my flesh and blood. The trace led directly to his home IP. It was his account that had distributed the document to the first gossip site. I stared at the screen long enough for my eyes to blur before I drove straight to the family townhouse. He was there, smiling, drink in hand, schmoozing like a Hartley PR puppet. Why? I didn't scream. I didn't have to. My voice landed like a blade. He blinked. Allegra, why would you do this to me? His fake calm snapped. Because I was never going to get anything unless you were out of the picture. I laughed, bitter. So you handed me to the wolves? You were always the one, the chosen one. I was the spare, the screw-up, the disappointment. His voice cracked with something that sounded like jealousy wrapped in shame. I did what I had to. You stabbed me in the back and called it survival. Mom said... I cut him off. Don't you dare use her name like a shield. He didn't stop me when I turned to leave. You're not my brother anymore. That night, I sat at my kitchen table, hands still trembling but steady enough to type. My statement to the press wasn't a plea. It wasn't a defense. It was the start of war. When truth is twisted into weapons, I wrote, silence is not strength. I will speak. I hit send. Then another message popped up. No name, just a number I didn't recognize. They've done this before. Check the clause. Houston was sweltering that day. I remember because the air outside felt thick enough to chew, and the conference room's AC sputtered like it was dying too. I sat across from Carmen James, a partner at a boutique law firm, sharp-eyed, no nonsense, a woman who didn't flinch. She pushed a folder toward me. This is the digital copy we received from the probate office. Something bothering you? I skimmed the clauses. Names, percentages, legal jargon, all painfully familiar, until it wasn't. Where's the dishonesty clause? I asked. Carmen leaned in, brows tightening. Excuse me? It was in the original draft. My grandfather insisted on it. Anyone caught deceiving the trust would forfeit their rights. She flipped through the digital version again. Nothing. A small laugh escaped my mouth. It wasn't joy. It was that sharp, brittle kind of laugh you give when you realize you're standing over a trap door you didn't know existed. This copy's been doctored, I said. Someone took it out. Carmen looked up slowly. Then we need the original. I already knew where to go. Malcolm's assisted living room had the smell of lemon polish and quiet regret. He was thinner now, bones too close to skin, but his eyes still cut through noise like glass. "I know why you're here," he said, without looking at me. He was holding a weathered envelope. "I trusted you once," I told him. "Don't make me regret coming back." He handed me the envelope with both hands, like it might disintegrate under pressure. "I never trusted digital files. They can vanish," he muttered. "But paper whispers the truth even after the liars are gone." I opened it. There it was, the will, unaltered. The dishonesty clause sat clean on page 7, signed, notarized, dated 2 years before Lorraine ever got her clause in the trust. I wanted to cry, not out of joy, but relief. Proof, finally. "Why didn't you tell me about this?" I asked. "Because you wouldn't have fought for it until it was yours to lose." I stared at him. "You let them erase me, and you let me think you had." His lips quivered, but he said nothing. Back at Carmen's office, I slid the original across the table. Her jaw clenched. "This changes everything." We reviewed line by line. With the dishonesty clause reinstated, the transfer to Lorraine was invalid if proven fraudulent. That was our path. Narrow, sharp, but real. That night, I drafted the cease and desist. No PR spin, no begging, just raw legal teeth. To the board, to the trustees, to Lorraine. Effective immediately, all claims to the Hartley estate by any party under fraudulent pretense are in direct violation of Clause 7, subsection B. The legal storm was about to begin, and I was no longer the one hiding from the thunder. When I got home, I pulled out the small fireproof safe Malcolm had gifted me on my 30th birthday, still unopened until now. I placed the original will inside, locked it, and slid it under the floorboard. Then I sat still. No panic, no spirals, just stillness. For the first time in weeks, I wasn't reacting. I was planning. And then my phone buzzed. Unknown sender. Message read, "They've done this before. Follow the money. Naples. Start with the donations." The email came just after midnight. No subject line, no sender. Just one line. "Start with the donations, Naples." I stared at it for a long time before forwarding it to Dana. If there was anyone who could trace blood through spreadsheets, it was her. 2 hours later, her voice buzzed through my phone like static edged with urgency. "Allegra, you're going to want to sit down." She'd found a network of financial transfers originating from Hartley Regency's main account. Nothing direct, just carefully layered charitable donations to an overseas nonprofit called La Luz Foundation. "I checked their filings," Dana said. "They don't run any programs. They don't even have a board." My throat went dry. "Naples?" "Registered there, set up by someone named Lucia Vanelli. But her passport photos pixelated. Fake." My stomach sank. The kind of sinking that feels like falling forever. "They created a ghost," I whispered. "They created a laundromat," Dana corrected. "A big one." I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I stared at the screen and saw everything clearly. My parents didn't just cut me out. They'd stolen from the company, smuggled it through legal facades, and prepped their escape in Italian lace. It wasn't paranoia, it was proof. I reached out to a journalist I trusted, Trish Conrad, former investigative reporter for the Houston Chronicle. Tough, smart, and burned enough bridges to not care whose reputation she torched next. "I'm in," she said, "but I need receipts." I gave her everything: emails, payment logs, the La Luz registration, a snapshot of the clause Malcolm had saved. It was like fitting the last tile into a mosaic that had always been chaos up close, but now spelled one clear word: fraud. While she worked her angle, I built my own. I wrote a brief, attached PDFs, highlighted numbers, labeled accounts. This wasn't a daughter scorned. This was an insider with a case. And still, this hurt in a way nothing else had. They didn't just lie to me. They hijacked the narrative of who I was. They fed the world a version of me they could weaponize, and when I didn't break, they buried the cash and ran. This time, I would bury their story. I sat at my desk, the cursor blinking over the subject line. Urgent, whistleblower evidence, Hartley Regency fraud. My fingers hovered. This wasn't just for me anymore. This was for the interns Wendell never paid. The single mom fired days before her benefits vested. The clients manipulated into thinking they were giving to orphans when the only hands grabbing the money were manicured and familiar. I hit send. 5 seconds later, my phone rang. Blocked number, voicemail. I listened. A man's voice, flat, cold, practiced. You have no idea what you've just started. They say silence can be power. But today, it was breaking like glass. I opened my laptop and was immediately greeted by the headline, "Former Hartley employees speak out." Beneath it, story after story unfolded. Anonymous testimonials, raw and unfiltered, about withheld wages, manipulated contracts, and a culture of silence built on fear. Some I recognized, receptionists, assistants, interns who had quietly disappeared. One wrote, "I was screamed at in front of clients. When I asked for overtime pay, they cut my hours instead." Another said, "They made us lie to investors. We were told to fake spreadsheets." Reading them hurt more than I expected. I had spent so long thinking I was the only casualty. But I wasn't. I was just the one with a last name. And then, Claire showed up. She walked into my condo like she'd never been gone, hair shorter, eyes sharper. She carried 2 enormous binders and a look that said she'd already made peace with war. "I couldn't stay quiet anymore," she said. "They almost broke me." I took the binders from her hands, pages and pages of meticulous records. Every falsified transaction, every forged signature, every donation rerouted to the Lalous front. One document stopped me cold. A signed authorization from Lorraine, approving funds for European philanthropic efforts. Claire sat across from me and slid forward a flash drive. "This has everything digitized. I already encrypted a copy and sent it to 3 attorneys just in case." We called Trish, the reporter, and arranged for a joint press release and public deposition. Claire would go on record. She was terrified, but also determined. "They silenced everyone," she whispered. "But not this time." That night, my phone buzzed with a subpoena update from my legal team. We'd requested travel intel on anyone affiliated with Hartley Regency. The results were chilling. A full family booking, first class, Naples, one way. They were leaving tomorrow morning. I stared at the itinerary, my chest pounding. Lorraine, Wendell, and 2 Shell business partners. A coordinated exit, just like the emails had warned. I didn't wait. My lawyers filed emergency motions. We froze outgoing international assets, flagged their passports with Homeland Security, and notified the fraud division of the IRS. They thought they were slick, untouchable. They were wrong. I stood outside the courthouse steps with Claire beside me, media lights flaring like a swarm of fireflies. I told the truth, not just mine, but everyone's. I named names, cited numbers, and made it clear. This was no family feud. It was a corporate exorcism. That night, I stood in my apartment, alone, watching the news break live. Helicopters over the Hartley estate, a flash of red and blue. Reporters swarmed like bloodhounds. My phone rang. My attorney's voice was calm but electric. "They issued the arrest warrants. We did it." I pressed my hand to the window, the city lights glittering like teeth. "But we're not done yet," he added. "They're going to fight like hell." I smiled. "So will I." The house was empty. Dorian walked through the grand hallway like a stranger in his own skin. Dust motes floated through the morning light. The safe room was open, emptied. No signs of suitcases, no folder with his name, no fake passport, no escape plan. He wasn't on the list. And for the first time in his life, he wasn't covering for them. He was the one discarded. He sat on the edge of the marble foyer step, crumpling in on himself. He had sold out his sister, spun lies for their parents, humiliated her in front of the world. And in the end, they left him behind like a used napkin at a table they'd already fled. My legal battle ended the next day. It didn't feel like a victory. It felt like a signed truce in a war I didn't start. The judge ruled the original will binding, with Claire's testimony and forensic evidence sealing every lie. I was reinstated as trustee. Hartley Regency was mine again. But no applause followed, no champagne, just a stack of papers on mahogany wood and the soft click of a pen that felt more like a funeral than a triumph. The boardroom emptied, and I stood alone. This wasn't what I dreamed of. Later that night, I went to Grandpa Malcolm's study. It smelled of old leather and cedar polish, still exactly as he left it. I placed a framed copy of his buried letter on the desk, the one he tried to get to me on my 18th birthday. 16 years ago, I would have tossed it aside, thinking it dramatic. Now I understood every word, every hesitation in his voice, every pause that hinted at the storm beneath his surface. He wasn't perfect, but he tried. When I got back home, a letter waited for me. No stamp, no name. Inside was a single sheet of paper in handwriting I recognized from childhood worksheets and messy birthday cards. I didn't know what they were planning. I was loyal, maybe too loyal. I never hated you. I just hated how small they made me feel next to you. No signature, just Dorian's pain, neatly folded, never sent until now. I didn't cry, I didn't forgive, but I didn't burn it either. The next week, I sat at the head of a long table inside our restructured foundation. No portraits on the walls, no nonsense slogans, just real work. I was building something clean, something honest. I lost my family, I whispered, voice low. But maybe I found myself. The room was quiet except for the rustle of papers. Outside, the city moved on, and I would too. Just as I was packing up for the evening, a brown envelope slid under my door. No return address. Inside was a single thumb drive, labeled in sharp black ink, Naples. I stared at it for a long time. The envelope's seal crackled beneath my fingertips. Part of me didn't want to open it, but I had to know. I used to think loyalty was about staying silent, about keeping the peace no matter the cost. But silence cost me everything. Sometimes the people who say they love you the most are the ones who do the deepest damage. And healing doesn't come from revenge. It comes from reclaiming your voice. If you've ever been betrayed by someone you trusted, I hope my story reminds you that you're not weak for walking away. You're strong for standing your ground. What would you have done in my place? Would you have stayed quiet or risked everything for the truth? If this story moved you or made you think, drop a 1 inch in the comments or tell me where you're watching from. If it didn't connect with you, I'd still love to hear why and where you are in your own story. And if you want to hear more real, raw stories like this one, don't forget to subscribe so you never miss what's coming next.